Are you not eating at all?
Am I not eating at all? Of course, I'm eating quite a bit. I'm being fed by quite a few people currently.
Are you in Goa now?
Yes, I am.
So this is like a new feature at this edition where we bring in writers like you, prestigious writers, alumni, to bring them back and put them in conversation with our students. Because they've read you guys and they're curious to know. So you tell me when you're ready to start. Then we'll start.
With the reading?
Yeah, you tell me when you're ready, then I'll introduce you formally.
Oh, okay. I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
I have everything here.
Okay.
I can see some people in the waiting room though, who keep popping up to the top of my screen.
Joining from iPhone. Someone called iPhone is joining. Welcome everybody to day 3 of Meta 2023. We have with us a very special young woman today, Miss Zenisha Gonsalves, who was in the first batch of the English Journalism and Psychology program. She wrote her way out of everything I thought is impossible to conquer. Things like very complicated emotions about love, desire, friendship, food. Even the one notable thing about Miss Zenisha is how she says "kakka" in Kannada. She's often teased about this. After she graduated, she got an MA in English from St. Joseph's University and has since then gone missing, as it were, because she refuses to share her work with anybody, no matter how many messages you send her. And but I do believe she has finished working on a book, co-written with somebody else. And I do believe that she writes occasionally, often. In the long emails that we send to one another, it's become quite clear that she's writing, thinking about writing, jogging, basketballing. She has several interests. So Zenisha is here with us this evening to talk to us about writing, about her relationship with it, her love affair with it, her toxicity with it, and other such terms. She will be in conversation with another young writer, Shweta Philip, who will join us she's in first MA English now. We thought it would be interesting to put two students together to see what comes out of it as a conversation around writing. Shweta Philip, hi. Meet Zenisha. Zenisha, please meet Shweta Philip.
Hi.
Shweta Philip also did her English Journalism and Psychology in the 2017 batch. She's currently studying MA, like Zenisha Gonsalves, here in the university. Shweta Philip has a scale relationship with writing, meaning until somebody is holding a scale and a foot ruler and running after her, she refuses to write. But like you, she has a very, very strong relationship with words and writing. The presenters I think we'll be able to read some of both these young women's works here. You can check it out on the chat box, both Zenisha's and Shweta's. So I'm just going to go away now and let both you young bright people talk. Zenisha will read a poem or excerpts from her short fiction for us, and then we'll continue. So Shweta Philip and Zenisha, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. I have a bit of a long excerpt, a section from a story. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's okay. What we're here for.
Should I start?
Yeah. Wait, Shweta, why don't you introduce yourself to Zenisha properly? Sorry.
Hi. I'm like one fan sitting in the corner of the room, reading you and wondering who you are. And yeah, that's about it. I think I'll say for now.
Shweta, sorry, I don't know if it's my laptop, but your voice is not very clear.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, this is much better.
Sorry. Should I repeat what I said?
Yeah, because I didn't hear only.
Okay, so I said I'm just one fan of all you lovely women sitting in the corner of the room and wanting to know more about you, wishing to be like you. Uh, that's what I'll say about myself for now.
Right. I am looking forward to hearing some of your writing and to talking with you. Okay, so I think I'll just jump in then. I have my story here. I'm clear, right? I'm audible? Okay, all right. So I'm going to read you the first section of a story that is called What is Yours? That I've been working on for a couple of months, the last couple of months. And this is the first half of it. What is yours? Yesterday, as I cut the ribbon for the birthday present, I thought of Giada's words, how she had dropped them over my shoulder straight into the paint I was mixing for the Theobroma mural. I had looked down, almost expecting the color to have changed, but it was the same Gelusal pink that the marketing consultant had requested. Muted, she had called it. Joyful, but in a way that's not energizing, okay? In a way that's calming to the senses. Like, how to tell you? Happy, but it shouldn't interrupt. Then she had looked mildly apologetic and continued. I'm telling you how to do your job, I guess. I guess if you can't imagine the pink sitting in an eyeshadow palette, make it softer, keep making it softer till you can imagine it sitting there. On Giada's first night in the city, I told her how my eyes had traveled to the Mahadev temple just across the street, how it was the exact shade that the consultant was describing, and how I had known to keep quiet, because if I had said Gelusil or Mahadev temple, I would have lost the job. Show me a picture, no, Giada said, of this consultant. And when I rolled my eyes and Googled her, Giada held my phone in both her hands, too close to her face, and declared, abruptly, bet she goes to the mandir every Friday. Yeah, I said, I guess she doesn't notice, no? Because I wasn't sure what detail of the image had caught her eye. I'd begun pre-mixing my paints a few months before in an attempt to keep up with a sudden influx of Instagram-fueled commissions. You have to develop a business sense, Lar, Giada had been saying. How will you make your art otherwise? Sometimes I liked when Giada pushed me like this. Other times I felt my eyes stinging and would catch myself feeling grateful for the new measurable distance between us. Rarely, though I had trouble admitting this even to myself, I knew I was only a cross-section of a hair away from snapping at her. This was followed by guilt, which hummed softly in my gut till it crept into my blood, into the tips of my fingers, till I would curse and text her. Thank you, Giada. You're right, of course. She'd take her time to reply, and then, of course I'm right, Lar. Hiding your art is one way of protecting it. Sharing it is another. I'd begin typing something about wanting to read what she was writing, or about the family homes she was decluttering and fixing up in perpetuity. Her mother's, her father's, her grandfather's. But then I'd bite my tongue and hit the back arrow key till the little white box was empty and send instead, yes. I began to think about how to curate Instagram content. The thought made me want to weep and would reserve whole afternoons for sitting down at my kitchen table that overlooked the Mazgon Mongenis, learning about algorithms, paying attention to the reels that other artists were making. The ones I liked, the ones that I could bear to use as a template for my own, always reminding myself that I could not afford to lose my own style. That too, a style which had not announced itself yet, which I was only beginning to wrestle with some kind of honesty, was saved to a special folder I'd made for reference. The process seemed to ask of me a constant imagination of who I was when I was making an art account, selecting a profile picture, a bio, how I used space in the grid, how often I employed the story function, requiring always a clarity that left me unmoored. How long can this last? I wrote to Giada when the work had started to come in. How many bakeries, cafes, co-working attics, hostels were there to paint murals for? And how many artists? I had even had some older establishments reach out about drawing something on the wall because we hear it is good for the business. The sons of Irani and Gujarati businessmen who squirmed in their seats and told their waiters to bring me nimbu panis and kachoris while they struggled with the strings of this new arrangement and a single pankha word above us. How is it that an artist, that too, was this what an artist looked like these days, this 20-something-year-old with the face of a teenager, that an artist was sitting in the same chairs that their great-grandfathers had had custom made by the old masters, speaking of increased footfall? And why was it that they were listening? Giada called me when I'd send an email like this and say, oof, even I want some hot inheritor to feed me kachoris, yeah. And I'd feel the irritated knot of my eyebrows open and laugh. What about all your Goan business boys, I'd remind her. Ians and Nathans and Kartiks, who would take her on long drives that would inevitably include a breezy, half-serious tour of ancestral property, which they seemed to need to show her very early on in a courting process I didn't quite understand. Friends, Giada would say. I grew up with them. I've known them forever. I wasn't sure how this qualified as disqualification, but I'd say, okay, and promised to send her a photograph of what I was working on. I wouldn't mention that this was the only time I was alone with my mural, this cut in the fabric of things, when I would take it from the wall and send it to her in an email. Painting, schmainting, your Giada is going to think you live in one of your paintings, Farai had said one evening. We were sitting in his mother's apartment in Matunga. He insisted I call it his mother's, though Farai's artist mother lived abroad, and from what I could tell, the apartment was now his, watching a young couple teach their daughter how to maneuver a cycle around the Hotel Vihar bend. Do you send her photographs of anything else? I was watching the girl's neatly sectioned braids swing indignantly around her shoulders each time her father pulled his phone from his ear to push her with a little less fear than her mother, the ribboned ends slipping each time she spun around to glare at him. The sunlight was catching the metallic gold of her magenta ribbon before it caught the pinpoint of her rage, making me laugh. Farai, who had given up looking at me and who was now following my gaze, said, "This is day 9. They come here in the mornings too. The girl and her father, I mean. In the morning, I think." Farai always looked a little like he was telling a secret when he laughed. "In the morning, I think she knows how to cycle, you know." "I haven't," I said, sent Giada a photograph of anything else. I keep forgetting to. When I mentioned, let slip, that Farai's mother was also an artist, Giada had said that it was quite clear that I had mommy issues, and had they surfaced now in Bombay, or had she failed to notice them when we were at university? I was standing in my kitchen trying to will the rice to cook faster so I could return to the portrait I was working on, the portrait I was pretending to have enough time to work on, to the easel standing in my hall waiting for me to say something. The seconds capillaried from one phone tower to the next till the silence touched Giada in Goa, and then she said, "You know, in university, you never spoke of her at all." For a second, I stopped willing the rice and the dal and the chicken, the 3 things I made once a week on Sunday evening, and then put into tiny boxes in my freezer like a Tetris challenge, to do anything, and said, "What do you mean? I talked about her all the time. I talked about her too much even. I'm so embarrassed." "She'll call," Giada said. "Let her make her art, no? That's what she does, Lar. What she must do." Her voice had lifted at the end as if pulled by an invisible string. "Yes," I said, "it is what she does." In the months before she was to visit me in Bombay, in the small 1-bedroom, 3-story Mazgon flat I was renting from Alice, I had gotten into a new routine. Instagram and communications at the kitchen table, which, because the kitchen was so small, was pushed into one corner of the hall, paint cards and paint cans lined up along the landing outside, where I'd kneel after dinner, after my bath, my hair still damp, sometimes dripping into the paint, and where I would suddenly register the shouts of the last football match in the St. Mary's compound around the corner, or Joan and Gilly arguing in the apartment below mine, because Joan was saying again, I told you, didn't I? I'm right 99% of the time. And Gilly only wanted to read his evening paper, only wanted 20 minutes of peace. Or the single pothi, which had likely started out white but was now questionable beige, being lowered out of a window across the cul-de-sac for the next morning's bread. Or the child in the next apartment crying for her bear, her bear, her bear. Which bear, sweetie? Her mother was saying, also nearly crying. Do you mean the dog, sweetie? Is it the dog? Tommy, do you want Tommy? As I was mixing my paint, as my knees were going softly into the old wooden planks of the landing, these pieces of the evening would glow, would become suspended, would ask of everything else a quietness till they had finished performing their function. I had tried explaining this to Giada in an email, always a little wary of my own sentences when constructing them for her, and she had replied, almost too quickly, but which are you supposed to be, Lar, the fragment or the quiet? For some reason, I couldn't picture where she had been when she typed this. It was difficult to picture her in Goa at any of her usual haunts. And then, immediately after, Giada had forwarded 3 different profiles of rescued puppies to me on Instagram. See, no, she typed, what a god-awful thing this choosing is. Ian wants to adopt one of these, but only one. If I'm going to suffer this guilt, you should suffer it with me. It's only right. Suddenly, I could picture Giada again, huddled in her upstairs balcony in her grandparents' home by the cliff. Thank God for grandparents, she had said to me once when we were graduating from university, for that place where your parents can't reach you, but where you still belong to somebody, where she would sit and write her stories, her half stories, she said. Don't ask me to show you what I'm writing, Lar. I'm only writing half stories here. The 2x4 space with the wrought iron grill that was hidden by the trees that her grandmother had planted. Giada liked sitting here, writing here, smoking here. When they were together, speaking to Ian, who would stand in the garden downstairs, getting chewed by the mosquitoes, his sweet, adoring face framed by the orange orchids. He's the kindest boy in the world when I give him all my attention, Lar. Telling her that she needed to take a break. It was good for her to take a break. And then, when they were not together, watching Ian's car headlights through the branches of the cashew tree, pressing her back to the wall, moving out of sight, realizing that she liked not being seen by Ian, she liked not being known by Ian, she liked not finding herself caught in the wires of his mind. Sometimes, I couldn't bear to hear about Ian, stupid, lanky wanker, I had called him. I won't lie, Giada, it is difficult for me to understand it still. Giada had become very quiet then, and I felt the hollowness of my own body, an empty paint can rolling recklessly across the floor of my hall in Mazgon, through the legs of the single easel which I needed to have for some reason in the very center of the room, over stray sheets of the Mumbai Mirror, because I had promised Alice that I would take care of her flaws. Alice, who had never actually seen a painting of mine, but who had once drawn illustrations for Pratham books, and who reminded me as she gave me the keys that I was to paint here. Did I understand? Straight into the mug of brushes under the window, some of which I used every day, some of whose bristles were still wrapped in a protective plastic that kept them neat and nice to look at, to imagine painting with in the future. Later, Giada had emailed me. I know I push you, she said, but I can't bear to have you push me. And then, you don't understand, Lar. I only know what life is in the habit of collapsing into, not what it is made of. I knew that this was the kind of message that Giada would have written from her mother's apartment, sitting on the cold floor of the corridor, sandwiched between a pair of tall teak bookshelves, her back too straight, her mouth turned down at the corners, ever so slightly, in that manner I had never quite believed.
I'm in awe. Okay, sorry, am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah, I am in awe. I mean, I have to be honest. I would keep getting caught in like one part of what you were saying, and then I would sort of start daydreaming about that, and then I'd come back to what you were saying. I really want to. I'm looking forward to reading the story, and I want to like read it as slowly as possible. because I felt like there's a slowness to everything that you're describing, and it deserves that slow attention. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you for listening.
Ma'am, do we move on with the rest of it?
Yeah, you can start your Q&A and your conversation.
Okay. Okay, so
Hmm.
I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I had only ever read your writing, and I've heard a lot about you from like different teachers that I've spoken to. So I mean, I wanted to find out more about you as a person. So I tried looking you up online, and you're really elusive. I don't know why. There is nothing to like. There's no Instagram. There's no like. You don't have any tweets up on your account.
I don't have to.
Yeah. So like, just that sort of added to my idea that you're like this very, far away person, very well established in life and all of that. And I'm hoping we can unravel some of that mystery here today, because
Gosh. Hmm.
people that I've spoken to have always have also like said this, that they're excited to hear what you're like. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping we can do today.
Okay.
Okay, so to start off, um, why do you like writing? That is, if you do like writing. Um, and have you ever had difficulty calling yourself a writer? Um, and yeah, like do you want me to say the rest of the question now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I was told that you had taken a creative writing course at MCC online. And I'm wondering how your relationship with writing changed from like when you were a student and to when you were a teacher. Yeah.
Okay, which part should I try to answer first?
You can go chronologically. I don't know.
Okay. I know this is odd to say because usually I find the opposite when I speak to people who write and who are our age, but I haven't really had a problem calling myself a writer. It's something I've done since I was a kid, and it felt natural. It didn't feel like I had ever reached a point where I needed to earn the title of being called a writer. And I think in that way, it has remained a simpler term for me, and I'm quite comfortable with it. In terms of teaching, I think that I was very obsessed with form when I was in college, at least, and that I would always worry that the story would get lost in small mistakes that exist in a story, that always exist in a story. But when you're reading the work of young writers, and young writers who, in a way have thought of you as they're writing, like they know that writing is going to land up in your hands at some point, those things don't really make the kind of large difference that I used to imagine. And a lot of that fear, you realize with time, was unfounded. It's always special, I think, to talk about writing, and you just mostly feel grateful that people are trusting you with stories and like sharing them with you, especially people who are young and who are most excited about writing. So, yeah.
Okay, so to follow up on that, how do you feel about how do you feel about sharing your own writing with people? And has anyone ever said something that you didn't like about like what they read?
I think in general, when people say anything, it's impossible to like what they're saying, even if it's good things. If it's good things and you're feeling very exposed because you're sharing your writing, you don't trust them or you're irritated. And if it's bad things, in a way, you just tell yourself that they're not qualified to say those things. If I think people who really have engaged with writing for many years are very careful about what they say, and will never say something in an offhand or unhelpful manner. And I've been very lucky to just have really nice people around me. when I've shared my writing.
I experienced the same thing, especially when someone says something nice. I just can't believe them. I'm sure they're just being nice about it. So yeah, like when someone gives you feedback, even if it's like a friend, not necessarily a teacher or someone in authority, like how how difficult or what is your experience in going back to your writing? Like, because for me, it feels like someone, like by the time I reach back, it feels like someone else had written that, and then just I'm just a completely different person from whoever wrote that, and I find it really hard to edit my writing. So yeah, how is it with you?
Mm, I also find it hard to edit, I think, because the way something like lands on the page often feels the way it should be. But like I must say, after your initial defensiveness when it comes to feedback, there is a certain quiet, and you do go back and you do see how what someone was saying really makes sense. And eventually you're not writing just for yourself. So yeah, I do go back and I do think about it quietly later and make changes for sure.
Like, do you ever feel uncomfortable with confronting whatever you had written, and do you like ever not like it when you go back to it?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, that's where my difficulty arises. Like I find it hard to work with because I just want to give it up. But yeah, like you said, we're not just writing for ourselves. So
No, but also, yeah, you can't give it up.
yeah. Yes, that is the ambition.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was speaking to Vijeta ma'am once, I think like a year ago, she was describing you as a very sharp writer, but an even sharper reader. So I mean, I've never like since I've never experienced that or known how you read. I just want to know if you would be able to put into words, how is it that you read? Like, what things do you notice? Do you ever feel envy when you read someone and things like that?
Yeah, certainly, all the time. Envy, especially when people are closer to your age and you love their work. There's just natural envy there. But there's also comfort when you're reading someone who's about your age and writing really well. There's a sense like it's a little less lonely in a way. How I read, yeah, I think I do read quite carefully. I sit with a pencil and a ruler often and my many highlighters. But I don't think that's the way to enjoy what you're reading. It just has become how I tend to read of late. I miss how I used to read earlier, just breezing through things. I
So
don't have a clear experience of it is now.
with the way that you read, like, does that have an effect on how you write? Like when you're reading someone and you think maybe, oh, I wish I had written that or I could write like that. Does that or something that maybe like you thought, oh, I would have written it like this. Like, do any of those thoughts affect how you write?
Um, how I write. I think usually there's some distance between the two. It's more of an absorbing thing. I think if you're reading someone, you're naturally picking up on certain things that they've done a certain way, and that'll certainly come through in what you're writing at that point. Yeah. I tend to like how people solve things that I find complicated to solve, especially with stories where I'm making up a large chunk of it now. That never came naturally to me. Like I would just write stories that were true. And I always take note of when someone is problem solving really well in a piece.
Yeah, so I had that wondering about where your characters come from. And I've also, like, from what I've read of your writing and even what you read out for us today, I feel like people are very central to what you write, like the characters and the insides of their minds. Not so much what they're doing, but what they're doing says about them. So, like, I wanted to know, when you observe people or stories around you,
Mhm.
and you feel like there's something that you want to write about. Like what happens if you are faced with a character that you're not able to write, who's just not willing to be put into words?
I think that I just enjoy the fact that I have encountered a person like that. And that happens quite a lot. And I have like these copious notes on my phone where I'm always making notes about people who amuse me. And yeah, not everything goes into a story. I don't know if that was too vague.
No, that's true. But like, can you also tell us maybe one like very interesting person that you observed and felt like writing about? Maybe even someone that you never eventually wrote about.
I think the people who are most interesting to me are always the people who are closest to me. And to answer what you said about not being able to write about someone, I've written stories that I'm just not happy with, that will never see the light of day, because there's something, it always feels like feedback to me that I'm missing some understanding, or that I'm not ready to write that piece because I've experienced it at a level that's not ready to be a story. So in a way that makes me feel like either I'm not the person who is meant to write it right now, or that I haven't sat with it long enough, or that I don't have enough experience to write it. So that happens a lot. Like I'll write something and I'll just realize it's not the time to write it, because you're trying and trying to make it a story, but it doesn't want to become a story.
Okay, I have one last non-writing related question. But before that, is there anyone in the audience who wants to ask any questions?
They will leave it on the chat box. Continue with the questions.
Okay, so in the meantime, I hope you don't think I'm a stalker for like talking to people about you and finding out what you've been up to, because yeah, I heard that from Drishti ma'am actually, that during the pandemic you were alone in Fort Kochi. So like, yeah, I just wanted to hear what that was like, just being alone in the pandemic in a different place.
I went to Fort Kochi to write because I loved Fort Kochi, and it was kind of like Goa away from Goa without everything that I wanted to avoid in Goa. And lockdown was announced, I think, 2 weeks after I got there. So it was a bit of a shock. Kochi was like a dreamscape. I can't even explain the experience of being there in the first year of the pandemic. And I have notebooks and notebooks full of things that were just pouring out of me while I was in Kochi, but I still don't know how to make sense of those things. It's the most I've ever written in my life. And I just call them my pandemic notebooks because there's a stack of them like that. And I just had so much to write, but I also don't know what to make of it yet. Kochi was like blank space. And I remember in the rains, especially when you couldn't even tell what time of day it was, it just felt like it was one time the whole day. It was when I was writing most, and I can't even explain it. It felt like I was out of normal time. I think the pandemic did that to everyone in wherever you were. It just didn't feel like time was moving the same way. But then when you're in a little apartment with just windows on all sides and just rain all day long and there's no one in the town, it felt like I was living a parallel life, that real life was happening somewhere else. So I don't really know what to make of what I wrote while I was in Kochi. I've just left that alone for now.
And I was going for something that did not have to do with writing, and I guess that's we still went back to it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat. Harshit is asking, how has writing liberated you?
Well, I think it's just the place of the story, right? It's like anything that happens in life, if it can be a story, there is life after it. That nothing is greater than the story itself. And that something always goes into a story that you can't deal with in life in a way, or that you're not ready to deal with in life. I'm not sure that it liberates me that much. It's quite torturous, but yeah.
Yeah, I also wouldn't use that word, but one way that writing, I guess, helps is when someone has done something that I was not able to react to their face. Like maybe I wanted to say something or something like that. So I just make them a character in some really like small scale story and make them do something that would just be completely appalling to them. Like they would
Yeah.
just make them a
I'd love to
character.
read that if you were willing to share.
No, I don't think I am ready to be read. Okay, we have more questions. Shiba is asking, how would you state your way of writing as? Is it liberal or complex?
Can Shiba clarify a little bit what she means by that?
Okay, Shiba, can you send your question in the chat? In the meantime, Nix has asked, okay, so was there a piece that you wrote where it felt like the first time you felt like it was good and made you smile at it? I'd like to know what about it made you smile.
A piece that made me smile. There was this piece that I once wrote when I was applying to colleges, actually. It was about applying to colleges. It was just when I was in college. And the piece was about applying to colleges and about my mother just going mad by the process of me applying to college. And it was a piece about swimming and how we would inevitably talk about colleges, and how she started teasing me about crocodiles in the water every time we started talking about college. I think that piece still makes me smile. It's somewhere in my Google Drive.
Also, is your blog live anywhere? Because I couldn't find it.
No, it's not anymore. But I am building a website that should be out pretty soon.
Looking forward to that. Okay. Sai Harish says, I keep hearing that you need to understand why you like the things you like. Did you have a journey of self-doubt where you had to question why you liked things or why you wrote them? How did you navigate your way through that journey?
I think that's something I'm thinking about a lot right now. And maybe encountering the fear that I don't know what I like. That you're drawn to certain things, or that certain things were just a part of your world naturally. And then, at least for me, in the last couple of years, it reached a point where I wasn't even sure if those were the things I liked, which is a very, very, very scary thing to come to when you've only known a specific kind of way of being, I think that's something I learned from VJ ma'am, actually, which is that I always thought literature classes, for example, were serious and were meant to be solemn affairs. But she really, really, really taught me how to just thoroughly find joy in writing and in life, and to just laugh fully about the things that were making you laugh. And that's something that is still with me. It's still always with me. And especially now, because I certainly reached crisis point where I had no idea what I liked anymore. And yeah, I'm not sure it's about finding the things that bring you joy, but like letting that be the way you find everything else, and true joy, not, yeah.
Okay, Shiva has clarified the question. Is it is your writing free form, or do you see it as constructed on complicated feelings?
Complicated feelings. I don't know. If I had to choose between the two, I would say free form. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I try not to get into complicated feelings, if that makes sense. I think feelings are quite serious in simplicity also. I try not to get like a psychologist. I'll say it like that.
Yeah, I feel that's true as well. Okay, Prabhu David says, I feel that my writing isn't good when compared to others. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought I was getting stuck. Okay, I feel that my writing isn't good when compared to others. So how can I write better? Do you have any tips, as I'm not really a writer from a young age?
I mean, just read a lot and write a lot. And I really don't think there is better. And, it's just how much you're willing to write. At least from what I've seen from people around me, if you decide you want to write and you write, you eventually become that better that you're imagining. It seems to be how it goes.
Yeah, and I think more than reaching that better, it as in like actually arriving at some place, it's I don't know, that constant trying to arrive at some place that
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're chasing the story and as long as you have a feeling for what is working and what is not, it'll get there, I think.
okay. I think that's all the questions we have today. Um,
Are you going to read something now?
oh no. Oh, okay. Vijeta ma'am has a question. I also noticed that Joan and Gilly were in your other story as well.
Yeah,
So ma'am has asked you to Joan and Gilly follow you everywhere.
definitely. I think about them all the time. But I mean, to be more serious about that answer, the two people who they're based on, there was just something that I really loved. I'm reading Vijay's question, sorry. There's just something I really loved about the way life seemed to happen around their conversations, in a way that was very relaxing to me, like when I was around these two people. So yeah, they do follow me around.
Sorry, I had to turn my video off. I couldn't hear much. Um, okay, I don't think we have any more questions. Oh, okay, there's still more questions coming. Sorry. Shefali ma'am says, it's lovely to see you. Do you want to read it yourself? She's talking to you.
Okay. Okay, wait, hold on. There's another question below it. How do you know when something is working in your writing and when it's not? I'm not sure how I know. Let me think. I think I generally have a sense for whether a story itself is working or not working. And then later you figure out the smaller bits that are irritating you for some reason. But yeah, it's generally like a story that's working or a story that's not working. And I'm not sure how I know that or don't know that.
I'm wondering if you should wait for a few more minutes. Okay, yes. Nick says, how much did wanting to impress department professors influence your writing while you were a student here?
A lot, definitely. I mean, of course, they're very special. And it's very special to be 18 and to have people take your writing seriously. So a lot. I can see Vijay's question.
Yeah, I had that question as well. I mean, I like, do you want to tell us why you took all those law exams?
um, I've always felt, I'll be like quite honest, I've always felt like there's a way that my brain works that I don't use enough. And law always felt like that outlet, that this would be the thing that tackled that itch, you know? And something that was, at least to me, felt like it would be more in the world than the place that writing puts me when I'm writing. So that is why I took all those law exams.
Okay, we have Pranava with a question. Okay. Sometimes writing comes out full easily. Other times, no matter how much I try, it refuses to come. It makes me feel completely out of control. Does that happen to you? And how do you deal with it?
Your question, you're breaking up. Hold on, let me.
I think it's my internet. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I read out a question from the chat. Pranava asks, sometimes writing comes out full easily. Other times, no matter how much I try, it refuses to come. It makes me feel completely out of control. Does that happen to you, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And frankly, just leave it and do something else. I think the only way I've been able to write of late is to tell myself it's not the center of the universe. And maybe it's also just that you need to do other things, live life a little bit, do something silly. Yeah, but it's very scary when it happens, when you're trying to write and it is not happening. It's pure terror.
What if you have a deadline to meet, and that's happening?
It's also pure terror. If what is Pranava saying? No, Pranava, I'm serious. There were many years when writing was just the only thing that needed to be going well, and it really isn't the case. So take some pressure off of writing.
Okay, there are just a lot of reactions to get a like.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions? I don't know if they got lost in the chat. Okay, yes. Writing is very fluid, and I guess the control tends to get lost. It happens to me too. Writing shapes the way we want it to. Okay. I think that was a response too. Okay, we have more responses. Don't read it all. Okay, this is a question.
Okay.
I don't read it all, and I'm only beginning to write. And it's usually about myself or my experiences. Do you think it's essential for someone to be immersed in reading or literature to be a good writer?
No, I don't think so, if I'm being honest. I don't think it's essential. I think the problem that I've had of late, at least when I'm reading newer literature that's coming out, is that a lot of it feels very literary to me. So at least at this point, I would, like, as a reader, I'm very curious to read just people who are coming from different places. But yeah, you have to read. You have to have something to hold it up against, like, just even if it's just the rhythms of like someone else's writing.
Yeah, Vijeta ma'am is asking if you have time to read a short excerpt from anything you've been writing about recently.
I have time, but I'm not prepared for that. So maybe another time.
Okay, we have Yasmin asking, have you ever turned awful people or situations in your life into writing and had to show it to those people? What were the responses to how you had written about them?
No, because I always come to this point where I think you're awful in life. You don't even deserve to be in a story. And you've taken up like enough time in life, and you don't need to take up more space in a story. Usually I just write about people that I love and people that are doing things that amuse me.
We have a follow-up from the question where someone asked if they have to be immersed in reading and literature. So do you think it's fair if I find these very literary pieces boring, or should I be reading all sorts of things regardless?
Yeah, of course. Read what you want. But just read. Read what you want, but read. And no, it's completely fair to find it boring. I'm finding a lot of it boring. I'm finding like a lot of people are writing as if they have an imagination of who a writer should be. And that is just very disappointing, because that's the one thing you shouldn't be thinking about.
Okay, so I want to know, like, who are some people that you enjoy reading, like that you don't get bored by?
Quite a few of late. I think I've just become obsessed with Irish writers, mainly because a lot of their cultural context translate very easily to my Goan Catholic cultural context. And so, like Anne Enright and Sally Rooney and all these women who are writing, especially family stories, they're startlingly like similar to me when I'm reading a lot of them. So I've tended to read novels by them of late.
Okay. iPhone in the chat is asking you to choose between Mumbai or Bangalore.
Who is iPhone? Mumbai or Bangalore? That's just a very silly question. I think Mumbai is the space I always return to when I'm writing. For some reason, I don't think I ever write about Bangalore, but Bangalore is certainly the reason I've been able to write. So yeah, and for now, Bombay for sure. I don't know what that question was supposed to mean.
I think they're trying to know your loyalties. Okay. If there are no more questions, um, ma'am, do you want to take over?
Thank you, Zenisha Gonsalves.
Thank you, Shweta.
for
Thank
taking
you. I had a great time.
us. Do you have closing remarks for us?
Me?
Ah.
I'm just so happy to see familiar names here today. And
Many familiar names.
yeah.
Familiar icons also. I think I know who that is.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meta thanks you, and we're very happy that you came here to read your story. If you're ever in Bangalore, whenever that is, please do come and read from your book of us.
And please share more of your writing with us. We're very, I don't know, longing people here.
I will. I want to read all of you also. So send me links.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't say send me links. All these young people will ransack your email inbox.
I'm happy to be sent and ransacked.
Thanks, Zenisha.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy Meta.
Meta to you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Tomorrow we have a very long day at day 4 of Meta. We have Parumita Vora talking about K-drama and Shah Rukh Khan at 11 a.m. That is in the Arupur block basement. Then we have a lecture demonstration by theatre artist Madhika Prasad, also at Arupur block basement. And then we have workshop, Professor Arulmani's workshop, King Chili and Coping with Heartbreaks, which is our star workshop. That's also happening at the CE basement, followed very quickly by Professor Shefali's. Is that happening tomorrow? At 8 p.m.
No, ma'am.
Is it happening tomorrow?
No. Isn't it Jugal movie session tomorrow?
Tomorrow, Jugal Modi in conversation with Professor Franny at 8 p.m. on Zoom. Thank you. Have a nice day.